sky. Landed in a field, baby, next to I-35. Well, I don't know what they want, but it might be you and I. 25 months, baby. Hey folks, this is Moot Davis, and this is the next installment of the Moot Point Podcast. Hope everybody's doing okay out there. I'm doing okay here. Now today, I'm going to be interviewing my younger brother, Mike. Now, Mike was our road manager from about 2005 into 2006, and he was with us for some seminal shows and some seminal disasters. So I'm going to be chatting with him today and talking about how this experience ruined his life. Here we go. So again, I'm here with my brother Mike. Mike, say hey.
Hello, everybody.
Right on. So, I wanted to bring you in because, as I was mentioning, you were our road manager there for a couple of the seminal months, that stretched between 2005 2006, when we were on the road with Pete Anderson and all that good stuff. Sure. And we had some pretty unique experiences out there. So, we should, number one, talk about, what was the first memory that you have of me doing any kind of music stuff?
Well, I was living down the Jersey Shore, and you had gone to Nashville, Tennessee.
Right.
That was pretty much my first memory of that.
Okay, yeah.
I think you had already started playing guitar, and were writing songs already?
Right, yeah. Because when we were growing up, I'd never had any kind of musical, really anything going on, and it was more acting based. And you were always sort of writing and directing these little films and things along that line, right?
Yeah.
And so you're living down at the shore. I moved to Nashville, and then we really didn't get to spend too much time together until I was already living out in Los Angeles, and you came out to live, and we were going to live together, and we rented a loft together in downtown Los Angeles.
Right.
And that's sort of where it started. Now, again, that would be like the kind of the one and only time that we've ever lived together, right?
Yeah. Other than when we were kids, yeah.
Right. And the way I remember it going is that you had just gotten hired at a restaurant in downtown LA, and I had talked you into not going into work, but rather going on the road with us, leaving like the next day, for this like 30-day tour. Do you remember this?
Right. Well, I'd been looking for work for a couple months in Los Angeles, to no avail.
Right.
And I had just moved there after 10 years of waiting tables.
Right.
And I was done with it. So I found a job waiting tables. And the only other option was to go on the road with you as a tour manager. So it seemed like an adventure. And I knew it wasn't going to pay very well. But it beat waiting tables.
Right. Okay. Well, see, I always thought that I kind of stole you, and then I took some pride in that. But it turns out that I was actually not that bad an option. So that's
No, it's exactly that. I had no idea what to do as a tour manager.
Right.
And I'd seen you come, because I said I was living at the loft for a couple months there, and you had gone out on a tour already and come back.
Right.
And I had done my first, I think, 2 or 3 months in Los Angeles alone, and it was kind of a scary place. We were living downtown, and 2 blocks from Skid Row, and you couldn't go out after night. And, I think I had 2 weeks with you before you left.
Right.
And, yeah, so it was special.
Yeah.
And I think part of it was I didn't want to move all the way to Los Angeles and wait tables.
Yeah.
I think the other part of it was I was scared to death to be in LA by myself.
Okay.
And I think the other part was you came home after that first tour of me being there, and you were having all kinds of problems, I think.
Sounds right.
And I was saying to myself, I could prevent some of these.
Right.
Or at least keep you company during them.
Right. Right.
And so it seemed like a good option.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I don't remember specifically for that tour what the problems were, but I do remember, it was a very difficult time for me being on the road. I think my relationship with Pete had begun to sour already by then, and I think that these tours were just kind of. I mean, there would be great days, but the majority of the time it was just kind of like a slog, through the mud. And literally, I'd come home and just try and stay as drunk as I could, to sort of get through it before we left in a week, a week later to go out on the road again. But yeah, I remember once you finally agreed to come on the road, how excited I was, because it was like just what you said, like, like, oh man, me and my brother will be able to hang out and go see stuff together, you know what I mean? And I'll have some insulation from these rats that I got to deal with. And they weren't all bad, I mean, some of those guys I still talk to and are great, but I mean, it just seemed to be like a very stressful and like painful time for me. So it was definitely a relief to have you signed on, and you really did become the best road manager we had with all the the sort of behind the scenes stuff that you did about like actually giving us some sort of financial outlook of what we were doing, and the way you dealt with club promoters and all that good stuff. I mean, you were definitely really good at your job. But then the other part was, once that shit was all over, we got to hang out and see the states together. So
Yeah, absolutely. That was fun. We were always really close,
Right.
growing up, and I think maybe we had for the first time in our lives, we had spent maybe 8 to 10 years apart.
Right.
You had moved away and I had moved away for the first time in our lives, and then I moved out there and I got to spend 2 weeks with you, and then you came back from tour, and I realized this would be a great time to spend some time with you, and yeah.
Right on. So, what were your first impressions once we got on the road? Now, before even we get to that, what were your first impressions like once you went to the record label for the first time and met with Pete and saw our sort of interaction together? What was your whole take on the scene?
Well, he was definitely a charming guy.
Yeah.
And my first reaction was, I walked in and I saw a TV and a sofa. I was like, okay. And then I turned the corner and just rows of gold records.
Yeah.
And that kind of blew me away. And I'd never seen anything like that before.
Right.
Just everybody I've always heard about. Obviously Dwight Yoakam and Katie Lang.
Yeah.
And that's the only one I could think of. But there were tons. And it was special to see. And that definitely stuck with me every time I talked to Pete.
Right.
Because he's accomplished this or whatever. And so my first reaction to Little Dog Records was that it was a very special place. And Pete took us on a tour, kind of the studio in Burbank, I think.
Right.
And he seemed like a very confident guy.
Yeah.
I didn't really notice any kind of problems or anything.
Right.
Till maybe a couple weeks later.
Yeah.
And then the cracks started to appear.
Yeah.
But I knew something was up when we got there, and the very first thing we did after getting to see the studio was get the hell out of Los Angeles. We just took off to the mountains.
Oh, right, right. So, yeah, to fill everybody in, what Mike's talking about is actually the first time that you came to the studio, the folks were with us, right?
Right.
Our mom and dad came out to visit, and so Pete showed us, or showed my folks and my brother the studio. And up until that point, I had literally been living in the drum room of that studio for about a year and a half. And that's why it was such a big deal that I was able to move out of there and move into a loft in downtown LA, and sort of, get out on my own, instead of, living right under Pete's nose kind of thing.
While you were making a record,
Yeah.
you were making one,
Yeah.
and getting ready to go out on tour.
Right. Yeah. So, I mean, I was definitely embedded, in more ways than one there at Little Dog. And it's true. So Pete showed, my family the studio, and we went out to eat, and we held it together long enough for me to get through that experience. And then my first, instinct was, let's get out of Los Angeles. And I picked like a big bear cabin that I had found to take the family to, for us to get away, because I needed for me to get away. And they were like, coming from the winter of New Jersey out to LA. It's nice and sunny, and I take them up to the mountains where it's about to dump snow on everybody. But yeah. So you caught on from there that it was a little bizarre.
Yeah. But, we took that tour van. Moot was driving a van at the time.
Yeah.
And it was the van he toured in. And
Right.
we drove that up to Big Bear in the
Right.
snow. And
Yeah.
it started to snow as soon as we got there.
Yeah. It started pouring snow. Yeah.
Yeah. And then as soon as the folks left back for New Jersey, and things kind of settled down, yeah, it was, I would go to the studio with you all the time. I would sense tension. There was definitely tension.
Yeah, well, it's funny. Like, I try and think about where my relationship with Pete started to turn, because when they first contacted me and it looked like I was actually going out there and going to be making a record, I realized the opportunity that this was, and I did everything in my power to be as good as I could and make the most of it, not screw it up in any kind of way that I might have if I was just a couple years younger, you know what I mean? So I was really there, and really like 110%. And we were, ever since I first got on the phone with Pete and he said, let's come out and, make a record. I'd always been asking, like, okay, cool, just let me know what this is, and like, if like we're going to be on your label or something, like, let's do a contract kind of thing, just because everybody drills into you, like, oh, don't get screwed on your first contract and all this kind of stuff. And so, a year later, after already making the first album and all that, I finally get some sort of contract and send it to my lawyer in Nashville. And he just goes through it like a lawyer would, and like, pulls out certain things and says, well, can we negotiate on this, because this is, I would feel better for my client if this was different. And so that went back and forth for, I don't know, I want to say a couple months, you know what I mean? And then, my father looked at the contract too and would chime in every now and then, nothing major, but, just trying to keep an eye out for me. And I wasn't too worried. I mean, I felt Pete had my best interest at heart, and like, we were just trying to make some records. It wasn't that big a deal. Anyway, I guess the process of getting the contract signed, after getting it a year after asking for it, had started to wear on Pete, and he wanted it signed for whatever reason. Like, it needed to be done immediately. So
Right.
I remember he called, whenever we had to have like a sit down kind of summit meeting, he would call me into the control room, because Little Dog, the office, also had a studio, like a full operating studio where we recorded both the albums, and where guys like Dwight would record a couple of their albums and all that kind of stuff. Anyway, he calls me into the control room, and he's very serious, and he goes, I can't tell if it's your father or your lawyer or both, but somebody's gumming up the works with this contract. And I was like, oh my God, really? All right. Well, like, what do you mean? Like, and I was so wide-eyed and so wanting to make this work. And like, I was like,
Sure.
oh, well, he's like, look, and we were about to leave, say it's like a Friday afternoon, right? And Monday morning, we were supposed to leave on our first really big tour. It was like a bus tour with Michelle Schacht, an artist that Pete had worked with in the past. And we were going to go all the way across the country and back. First really big tour, albums just out, all that kind of stuff. Getting ready to really do it, you know what I mean?
Right. Yeah.
Super psyched. The band's all ready to go. And Pete goes, look, if we don't get this contract signed, I can't go on the road with you. I can't write songs with you anymore. I can't do any more recording. And I'm like, oh, holy shit. Like, oh, man. So I immediately call my lawyer, call my dad. I was like, look, whatever kind of like stuff you're trying to get in there or get out of there, just forget it. Like, you can't jeopardize this relationship I got going. You know what I mean? And so we got it like packed up and signed and did the whole thing. And then as time goes by, that over that weekend, I'm thinking, well, there's no reason to ever play hardball with me. Like, I'm so not.
No, there wasn't
a player. Like, I'm not. I'm just literally like there, like a guy completely there to like do my job. And I think that started to like turn me against him, or at least see that he wasn't this. Because he's done so much and accomplished so much and is so beloved by like guitarists, and he's such an awesome producer, and he's an awesome guy, like one-on-one, and like he can be really like really cool. I mean, it was just, but I was like, man, why would you do that to me of all people? Like, I would never try and do anything that would like really jeopardize our working relationship. Like, no one's more stoked to be here than me.
right.
And I think that started to turn. And again, that was before our first tour. I mean, the first album had just come out. So by the time you got on the scene, I think we had already started to like really see our differences, and like,
Right.
If he would act out in certain ways, and I would certainly act out, in certain ways. And so you sort of stepped into.
You both having tantrums of some sort. Yeah, absolutely. And I realized at the time, I mean, I came in and it seemed so incestuous, the
Right.
relationship. As in, he was your manager, producer. He booked your shows for the most part.
Right. Well, the label did. We had a guy
label.
from the label. Yeah.
Anyway, every aspect of your career was sort of dictated by that place.
Right.
And I didn't, coming in as an outsider, I didn't see it as very healthy, because you had no room to bring in another viewpoint, which
Right.
as an independent representative would. And it was very overwhelming for you, and it was sort of empowering for them, and for that it just created a lot of friction, because things weren't going the way everybody had wanted.
Yeah.
So it was special.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so one of the first things I remember, though, that you had to deal with was Pete's rig, his guitar rig on the road. Do you remember this? And can you sort of walk us through what it was, or what you remember of it?
I do. I remember that. It got more complicated by the second tour.
Right.
But what ended up happening was I got pegged to be the road manager.
Right.
And that meant making sure we had, directions to every place we were going to.
Right.
And making sure I called ahead to the venue, and making sure we had a place to stay for the night.
Right.
All that stuff. And then by the first or second show of the first tour, I think Pete had wrangled me into carrying in his amps for him. Like, oh, Mike, would you mind getting that for me?
Yeah.
Sure. And it became one of my responsibilities. Every single
Right.
show, I would have to bring in his amps. So it'd be 2 amps. I forget what the kind they were.
The Line 6.
The Line 6, yeah.
Yeah.
So I'd be bringing in 2 Line 6 amps, a volume pedal, and maybe 2 or 3 guitars.
2 or 3 guitars, and was it the second tour where the wireless rig came in to it?
Yeah.
Okay.
But for what I noticed was every time I would tune a guitar and leave it on the set for him, and he would come to do a sound check, he would push the volume pedal all the way down so it'd be as soft as he could possibly make it.
Yeah.
And that would be the sound check. And then when the show came out, he would slam the volume pedal. So he would be like 5 times louder than he needed to be.
Right.
And by the second tour, he had gotten to Line 6 to develop, or maybe Line 6 to just release some kind of software that you put on your computer.
Mm-hmm.
So he sent me down to the Line 6 factory in California, and I met with the people, and they took me through the software. And basically, what you could do is you could plug in a laptop, and you could scroll through presets, which is pretty awesome.
Yeah.
So I think maybe 2 days before the tour started, we started programming his presets, which wasn't enough time.
Right.
And he was getting pissy about that.
Right.
And I spent maybe like 10 hours each day programming amps for him.
All right.
And we didn't get it all done. So the first night we stayed at a hotel, I'd be dragging the amps up to his hotel room.
Right.
I remember they were on like the 3rd floor.
Yeah, that's awesome.
And we'd be programming the presets all night. Yeah, I mean, it was for every single song there was a different preset.
Right. Yeah. Because when we played live, we played to a click, and he would have like different things timed to the tempo of the song and all that. Yeah, I remember that. Yeah. I just remember like when you had to take over setting up that rig, and I was like, oh man, poor Mikey.
Yeah. Well, it was kind of my field.
Yeah.
I'd been into TV and audio most of my life. So.
Right. And so let's talk about this. When you came out to Los Angeles, what were you doing in New Jersey right before that? Like you'd worked on that film, the Dead Chick film, right? So you want to talk a bit about that and
yeah, I was in. I got my associate's degree in TV, and then I was at the same time making a independent film, Dead Chick, black and white, 2 hours long or an hour and a half long.
Right.
Yeah, and it cost maybe like $2,000 to make. I just paid for it out of my pocket, and we had one showing, and it made all of the money back.
Right. He had at the premiere. It was like a big deal. Like it was
a pretty big deal.
Yeah. I remember hearing from the folks, because the folks went, right, and it was like
the folks went.
And how was it?
Yeah, it was special.
Yeah.
So,
but what I remember is when you came out to LA, you were sort of riding high. You were in a good place artistically, I think. Is that fair?
Yeah, that's fair.
And then between working with me and Pete, and the next thing you worked on, it seemed to crush you a little bit.
Pete never really crushed me.
Okay.
But I think we worked really hard on the road. Even when we weren't working, we were kind of working.
Right.
It was a 24-hour day job.
Yeah.
And obviously Pete and other people got to me from time to time.
Sure.
But I don't think it really crushed me. I think maybe it crushed my finances. But it definitely made me grumpy from time to time.
Yeah, sure.
But we had fun.
Yeah.
And when I reached the end of the road with touring and Pete and Little Dog, I don't think that had crushed me, but I'd done projects after that kind of crushed me.
Yeah.
For sure.
I think, when we talk about being on the road together, I mean, it wasn't all miserable. And I remember we had some pretty epic times together, because I don't remember being particularly close to the band at that point. We were going through so many band members. You know, our turnover of bass players and drummers was so high. You know, from my point of view, I really think that they had a hard time dealing with Pete on a regular basis. And I think on paper it looks great, and like like, oh man, I'm gonna be touring with Pete. But I think once you find out that we're all like in one motel room, like half of us sleeping on the floor, and
Yeah.
the gig pays shit, and then you got to put up with for all intents and purposes, mildly psychopathic man.
No, totally psychopathic.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah, and look, that takes nothing away from Pete's talent or anything like that. I'm just saying, like, shit, that was hard. It was really hard to tour with him, and yeah, and we lost a ton of players just because they didn't want to deal with his shit on the road. I've talked to other people about this, and they kind of confirmed that that's the case, and it wasn't,
well, I think I joined the same time as a bass player and a drummer joined.
right.
I think
Who,
maybe
who were the bass player and drummer when you joined?
Rob was
Okay,
fresh.
Rob.
He
Yeah.
was just joining, and then there was a drummer with long hair,
Joey.
Joey,
Yeah.
had just joined. Maybe Rob was around a little bit before I joined.
Okay.
But anyway, I know Joey was new. And coming into that, I think we came in together, but I at least had you to relate to. And I know that they kind of looked at Pete like he was nuts, but at the same time, they kind of respected his back catalog.
Right.
And you kind of have to. But after the excitement, after the gold records are far and behind you,
Yeah.
and you're 2 states away, that's when Pete let his guard down. And
Yeah.
when he let his guard down, he was prone to temper tantrums, acting impulsively, yelling at people, screaming at people, throwing things, and belittling anybody and everybody.
Yeah.
And I don't think he really meant it, because he was a very nice guy one-on-one. And when he acted out, he would say a lot of mean things or do a lot of mean things.
Right.
But I think he would come to regret it later.
Yeah.
But he didn't know how to apologize.
Right.
So-
Yeah. There was no apologizing in his
No.
makeup. Yeah.
So I think for me as a new person, and I think for maybe the rest of the band as a new person, we looked at this like, I'm not even getting paid $100 a week. So, F you and, and this BS. And I think most of us, or I think most of them, stuck it out because of his back catalog, and they believed in the music. And
Right.
they thought, this is good stuff. Nobody's doing anything like this anymore. And they thought it could go places. But
Yeah.
after a certain point of Pete throwing things across the room, you just
Yeah.
F it.
Yeah. I get it. Yeah, it definitely loses its luster pretty quickly, I think, for people. And again, we had such a high turnover. And again, I remember being taken into the control room for another summit meeting with Pete. I moved out to California, and I literally had suits and jeans. I didn't have any shorts. I wasn't a big shorts wearer. And I remember Pete, like, just as like a kind of a father figure, saying, man, you should go get yourself some shorts. You're in California now, kid, that kind of thing. And so I was like, oh yeah, man, I'll get a tennis outfit, you know what I mean? Like a white polo and a white pair of tennis shorts and some tennis sneakers. And so I show up in that, and Pete's like, what the fuck is that? And I was like, oh man, it's my rig, this is... So he really didn't sort of understand my, like, where I was coming from with a lot of the things that I did, and certainly having an acting background really didn't help at all. I think he saw that as sort of a detriment, and I don't know what he though they're nowhere near being similar, and you know, but I know that, you know, sort of Dwight went into acting and does a lot of movies and stuff, and has been quite successful at that. But I don't know if that, like, I don't know what Pete's thoughts were on that, but I don't think that they were. I don't think he thought highly of it. You know what I mean? And I certainly don't think he thought highly of my sort of more like theatrical side for that kind of stuff. But
No. He hated that Dwight could act.
Yeah.
Or that Dwight did act. And he resented that, I think. He thinks that in part took away from their relationship or drove a wedge between them.
right,
And I think when it came to you, he saw the same thing and it worried him for the future, but at the same time, he didn't understand who you were.
right,
And he definitely had an image of who Moot Davis was.
right,
And he wanted you to stick to that plan.
right,
And at first, when you went out and got the wrong type of clothes, he
Right.
would just, you know, kind of say that kind of thing. Like,
Yeah.
what the fuck are you wearing?
yeah,
But later, when it became apparent that he couldn't control you,
right,
and in fact, this was your way of getting some rebellious
Right,
streaks
yeah.
or whatever, that the more and more pressure came down, the more you would be apt to go be your own person.
right,
It worried him. And he didn't like it because he thought he could market a specific type of person, and anybody more built up or anything like that wouldn't be as marketable. And
yeah.
he had problems with that. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. There were definitely many a fight about it, and I remember one of the first ones. It was the incident where he, you know, pulled me into the control room and said, sat me down and said, "Look, all these guys are leaving, right? All these bass players and drummers that we're going through, and it's like they're leaving because, man, you can't walk around in white shorts." I don't know. I just felt like he I don't think he really understood it, you know what I mean, and couldn't get his head around it, and like I was coming from this acting background. There's no denying it, and like, you know, so it was definitely it was part of my makeup, you know what I mean, and
And it's one of the things I don't think he saw eye on you with you about. I think at the time he thought he could deny it, and it could just be kind of erased from your past.
right,
But it couldn't.
no,
And there was no precedent for it. I mean, there was nobody in country music, that was an actor and country musician. I mean,
well, I
Roy
mean,
Rogers.
yeah, well, I mean, I look at Dwight, you know, and like, I think the movies that Dwight did brought them a greater audience, you know, to their music, you know what I
Yeah,
mean?
but I would say to that Dwight played mostly the same character, and it was mostly Dwight, with or without attitude.
Right,
It was always kind of just Dwight on screen, and
Right.
you were kind of more like Earl Flynn or John Barrymore
Right.
on stage, you know.
yeah, yeah,
And that wasn't really country. I think had you worn your suits, your cowboy suit, your sequin suits, or
yeah,
any of the stuff off stage, and been a country actor,
right.
I don't think Pete would have had as big a problem with
No,
it.
yeah, I think you make a very good point. I think because it was so out of touch what my alter ego would be, you know, like once I got off stage, that Pete couldn't connect with it in any way, shape, or form. And then as our rift between us got deeper, I just went deeper into that every time we got home.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, it was like multiple personalities there for a while, you know.
Yeah, but it was all very understandable. I mean,
Yeah.
anybody could have taken a step back from that and said, "Look, you guys need to do this or do this."
Yeah.
But that was the problem with the situation. Nobody was able to take a step back.
No, it didn't seem to be. And, you know, I mean, as we talk about these problems that we're having, I mean, certain things were starting to happen. I mean, we were playing tons of shows, and we were starting probably just around this time. I got my first song placement, and it just happened to be in the movie Crash.
Yeah.
and then that won the Oscar, and we went to the premiere of it. Do you remember it?
Yeah, I remember.
Yeah, it was. For me, it was huge. You know, I mean, it was like wow, man. Despite all this bullshit that's going on, like things are happening.
Yeah.
And so you stay the course, you know, tennis shorts and all, you know, and just sort of do it. So, but yeah, it was pretty interesting. So one of the times that I want to talk about is when we went up to Canada for a big festival we were playing up there. We were up there for about 3 or 4 days, and we had about 2 shows, I think, in Manitoba.
Yep,
so,
Manitoba.
Yeah, and you and I got in a bit of trouble up there, and spent the next couple of days, shuffling to get it squared away so Pete wouldn't find out. So tell your version of what you remember.
Sure. I remember the very first thing that happened was going into Canada. Or was it coming back that we had a problem? I think it was.
No, it was going in. It was going into Canada.
We were sidelined by customs, and they tore the van apart.
Right.
And they kept us in waiting for hours.
Yeah.
They never found anything, I don't think.
No. I had a 15-passenger van, and part of the big plan was that Pete hired this guy to completely, gut everything out of the back of the van, and then we were going to make lockers to hold gear so we wouldn't get our gear stolen, and we were going to make bunks, to make it, more comfortable doing these massive tours, and then, certain sad individuals would actually sleep in the van at times overnight in certain places. But yeah, that's what we did. So they left the front bench seat in the back, and obviously the 2 front seats were there, but everything else was sort of stripped out, and then 2 bunks were made, and these are makeshift bunks, and then there was like a gear locker and then a guitar locker, made of like steel and stuff underneath the bench seats. And so it was questionable. It was questionable looking, our van and all that. And, who knows what customs thought about this rig, but it was a death trap, to be honest, because there were only 3 seat belts in the whole damn thing. And, yeah, I mean, there were many a time when we hit stuff and, like, the back bunks had no seatbelts of any kind, and you were just sort of slammed around the van. But anyway, yeah. So we were stopped at customs and had to sweat it out there for a while, while they looked for something. But we never brought anything at the time that would be a problem. It was just dealing with them, I think, right?
Yeah, it was just dealing with them.
Yeah.
Anyway, we got into Canada,
right.
and we went up to Manitoba, and we found our hotel room, which was maybe a mile away from 2 miles.
About 2 miles away. Yeah.
Away from the show. And so we're staying in a hotel right next to a Tommy Horton, and nothing between Tommy Horton and the show.
Now, what's the Tommy Horton thing?
It's a restaurant.
Okay.
Where you get like biscuits or something.
Perfect.
So, we unload and we go to the show, and we check in. We get passes, lanyards with passes on it.
All right.
And this is a big show. I think Big and Rich are playing there.
Yeah, all the creepiest folks in pop country are playing this thing. There's a couple different stages, and the first night I think we played on one of the smaller side stages, and then maybe Saturday night we were playing on the main stage. But this first night we were on one of the side ones, right?
Right.
I think the first night we played that little show, and that was fun. And then as we're getting off stage, they hand us this roll of drink tickets.
Right.
Like this, literally like a carnival roll of drink tickets. And then the bass player and the drummer were brand new, and they were on Pete's shit list. So they had to go back after the show and like shed with Pete for a bunch of hours.
Meanwhile, you and I were free.
Right. We were free, so we went and had this glorious night, right?
We did.
Somewhere towards it becoming evening, we got hungry and we went into the VIP tent.
Right.
And sat down towards the back, and they had these sort of plastic flower arrangements at the center of these tables, and we started pulling out these sort of long stem plastic flowers and like hitting each other with them, right? Like beating each other.
And I had no respect for this guy. I hate plastic flowers.
Okay.
And I was drunk.
I wasn't aware that this was an issue, but it explains a lot. So so after we got tired of that, I think it was you that sort of lit the fire, and you lit one, and it took a while to catch on, but once it did, it started to really go. And just about the time that it started to really catch fire, you got up and said, "We need more drinks."
I did.
So you left the tent, and I'm staring at this flower arrangement that's starting to plume this black smoke in this all white VIP tent, and as I'm watching, I'm thinking, shit, this is really bad. I mean, it's good in one way because Manitoba has such a terrible mosquito problem there during the summer, so it was keeping them away finally. But it was literally pluming like black smoke, and as I'm watching, I'm thinking, oh man, this thing's kind of getting out of control, and so I'm starting to try to blow on it to put it out, and it's only like getting worse. So I kind of position my body to try and block it from the view of other people, but I can't do anything about the black smoke pluming out of it. Anyway, I turn around at one point to see if you've returned with these drinks or are making your way back, and I see this like line of older women coming my way with this pissed off look on their face. And they sort of get up and they sort of horseshoe around me, and they're like, "What the hell are you doing? What the hell are you doing? And what is this?" And like, I'm half in the bag, and you're not there, and I didn't even start this damn fire. And I'm like, "Oh, I'm so sorry. It's like I thought it'd be good to like keep the mosquitoes away, you know what I mean?" And they're like, "Oh, tell me I'm an ass and all this kind of stuff." And I said, "I'm so sorry, and we put it out, and they're furious, especially the lead lady over there. She was furious with me. And I tried to explain to her that it was my brother that lit it, and he screwed off and went to go get more drinks and all that kind of stuff. But she wasn't buying it. And so again, I said, "I'm so sorry. It just, it got out of hand." And she said, "You're not sorry. And you get the hell out of here." So I was like, "All right, fair enough. I'll get going." And as I'm sort of making my way, it's starting to hit me like, this might not be good if this gets back to Pete. You know what I mean? Like, I don't want to be kicked out of my first festival in Canada with the legend in tow. So, just at that moment, she says, "Hey, wait a minute," and I turn around and I said, "Yeah," and she goes, "What band are you with?" And I thought for a split second, and I said Skeeter Davis, which was a country singer who had passed away a couple of years before. Anyway, she bought that, and I was like, all right, made it out safe, And I see my brother Mike in line still for the drinks, and I'm like, "Hey, Mike, we got to get the hell out of here. All hell's breaking loose inside." And you were like a rubber band. You were like, like all loosey-goosey and like couldn't stand up straight and swaying. And I was like, "No, seriously, man, get out of line. We got to get the hell out of here. We're in trouble." And you're like, "What? What are you talking about?" I was like, "Oh, forget it. You stay. You're screwed, And I'm just about to make my way through this gate and go out into the general audience, and sort of I can escape, into the mass of people. And somebody grabs me by the shoulders and spins me around, and grabs me by my lapels and says, "Who the hell are you?" And, what are you doing? And I said, "Oh, I'm sorry. What are you talking about?" And they go, "Oh, they're saying you started the fire in the VIP tent." And he grabs my credentials that are around my neck, and he goes, "Oh, you're with the Moot Davis band?" And I said, "No, man, I am Moot Davis." And he goes, "You're Moot Davis?" I said, "Yeah. And he goes, "Oh," and then he sort of starts to relax. He goes, "Look, the lady inside said you just tried to start a fire in there." I was like, "No, I did start a fire, but we put it out and it was an accident, the whole thing." it wasn't supposed to get that big, and it was just like it was an accident. And he goes, oh man. He goes, look, would you mind coming inside and just like, saying a couple words to her so to calm her down because she's really pissed. I was like, dude, I am so sorry. And he said, no, that's all good. Let's go talk to her. So we go in there. I plead my case to her. I give her like the excuse that we're Americans on the road and we're just trying to blow off steam and all this kind of stuff. I blamed you completely
As you
for starting the fire, and then left. And I don't think she was convinced of our trying to make up for it. But she let us go anyway. And I turned to this guy who walked me in. Now this guy just happens to be the guy who runs the festival. So he says, he goes, oh, she'll be fine. Don't worry about it. And I said, again, I'm so sorry. It just got out of hand and we're just trying to have some fun and it got out of hand. And he said, he goes, no worries. And then handed me another entire roll of drink tickets and said, just don't burn anything else down. And so that was the can of the story. Now, the next part of it is Mike and I partied the rest of the night away.
Yeah.
No idea. It's kind of a lost night. The next morning, we wake up in our hotel room I wake up with the fear. I call it the fear. It's when I wake up in the morning and it's like you realize the horrible shit you've done the night before and you have to sort of fix it before Pete finds out. You know what I mean? Because it would be, it would just be awful if Pete were to have found out. We're kind of there on his name, obviously more than mine. So I wake Mike up in this panic. I was like, holy shit, we're in serious trouble. So I was like, get the van, get the petty cash. We got to go to the venue and try and figure this out. So we find this lady. I take her all the petty cash. I give her all the petty cash and try and buy her off. And she reluctantly at first, but then goes along with it, and it ends up with us sort of, hugging it out and me apologizing and then us getting the hell out of there. But to my knowledge, Pete never found that out. So I think we did good damage control there. And yeah, man, that was the first and last time we've ever played Canada. Talk about when you finally had your falling out with Pete and that whole sort of saga that happened with him. Do you remember this?
I remember not too much about it.
Well, what I remember is we just got home from a tour, like a long tour, and we had about 2 days, and then we had to leave for this Canadian tour that we've been talking about. And we had, of course, we had a brand new drummer and a brand new bass player. Right. That we had to work up in 2 days. And we get back to our place and we're just crashing. We're just, tired from the road. And I remember either you came home or you called or something like that. And Pete could be mad at me, but he would never yell at me. It was always kind of like he tried to hold it together as far as we were concerned. But I think that he got into it with you.
Yeah,
do you remember?
Definitely. Yeah. So yeah, we had 2 days. I remember that. I remember being at the gas station when he called, and he was screaming, and I didn't know what the hell he was screaming about. But anyway, I went over to the little dog to see what was going on, and I walk in, and I don't remember what was the problem, but he was definitely pissed off at me for something.
Perfect.
And I walk in, and he's throwing shit across the room.
At the label?
Yeah. He's screaming at me, and he's picking stuff up off of the desk that he's standing next to and throwing it across the wall. And I don't know if I don't remember or if there was never really any one specific subject he was yelling about. I tend to think it was that he didn't have a specific subject. But yeah, that was how it started. And I basically turned around and said, fuck this, and walked out and bailed on the tour that happened the very next day.
Right.
Because there was just no reason to treat me like that. And it wasn't just that one thing.
Right.
He had been slowly deteriorating in front of me.
Right.
I guess he had let his guard down with me somehow.
Yeah.
And around me, he just felt like the cracks could show.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I didn't want to put up with it, so I left.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I don't remember what it was about. I think maybe it was about a map or something like that. Nothing. It was about nothing.
Yeah, all I remember is that, he had this tirade on you, and it was in front of everybody in the office.
Everybody was there, yep.
And you didn't do anything wrong, and I think he was more mad at me about something, but what he would never vocalize to me, so he took it out on you. And then I remember that kind of being like a defining moment for me, like, what? The second time with this guy pulling this kind of like crazy shit where he just doesn't have to be this way. And I remember thinking, well, I'm going to start to make moves to get away from this. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know how long it's going to take or what it's going to take, but I'm definitely going to avenge you somehow. You know what I mean? Seriously, that's how I felt about the whole thing. So
yeah, no, and I think I felt that way for you. I think before that had happened, I had seen what a fucked up situation this was, and I wished for you to get out of it.
Yeah.
So yeah, I was rooting for you.
Yeah. It certainly took a lot longer, but yeah, we stuck it out and were able to get out of there. But it's funny. Like I still have dreams where like Pete and I reconcile, and I'll, like I think it's still an unresolved thing, with me and him. So, and I don't think he has any interest in resolving it, So
No, I don't think so.
Yeah.
But yeah, I can see that. I can see how it's definitely a huge unresolved issue.
Yeah.
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 Yeah, I definitely think that you went into it kind of open-minded.
Right.
And he went into it kind of closed-minded.
Yeah.
He definitely had you on a course and didn't want any divergence.
Yeah.
And yeah, it was tough. It was a lot tougher than it had to be.
Oh yeah, for sure. Without a doubt.
That was a shame.
Yeah, without a doubt. Well, folks, that was our show, and that was my brother Mikey. All right, hey, I want to shout out some upcoming show dates for you. On July 7th, Bill Corvino and I are at the Twisted Tail in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. That's an 8 p.m. start, and it's a duo show. On Saturday, July 16th, we are in Brooklyn, New York at a joint called Skinny Dennis, playing there at 10 p.m. Then on Friday, July 22nd, we are at Chesterwood Americana Festival. That's in Stockbridge, Massachusetts, and that is also a duo show. Then on Wednesday, July 27th, we're a full band at the Edgewater Park, New Jersey Summer Concert Wednesday series. And then finally on Sunday, July 31st, we are at the Langosta Lounge in Asbury Park, New Jersey, doing their Sunday brunch, and that starts at 1 p.m. So come on out and get your fill. If you want to get in touch with me, you can send me an email at moot@mootdavis.com. All right, friends, be cool.